Scratch test here. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it's probably a lot better.
Now we're here,
Yeah.
and this is going to be hilarious. So the first minute or two probably didn't get any audio.
Now they're good.
Okay, now everybody's getting audio, and hopefully it's not peaking. Anyway, what I was saying is, welcome to our channel if it's the first time coming,
Yeah.
and welcome back if it's your...
Your first time ever coming to the channel,
Yeah.
or if you're coming back after watching any of our content, we really appreciate you returning and spending time with us. My name is Stefanie.
My name is Joseph.
And we are a couple that has pursued financial independence. We're now debt-free millionaires, and we really believe, in building community and sharing our experience to help others. And Joseph has started this mantra a long, long time ago, #help-others, even has t-shirts that say it.
Yeah, lots of agents in the United States have t-shirts that were my clients.
Yeah.
So yeah, we truly believe in that.
Yeah, and we talk about building wealth, investing, and pursuing financial independence. And what I was saying earlier on mute was that I like to tell people that everyone has the ability of building some level of financial independence on their terms, because financial independence looks very different for everybody. So
Yeah, no, I think, the thing that we're going to try to discuss today is high income earners. I think we'll have another conversation about low income earners because we started off that way, and we're fortunate enough and in a position to be able to earn higher incomes. And so that's what we want to discuss: high income earners living paycheck to paycheck, and just dive into that a little bit, and also try to give some solutions that we've seen and or lived through,
yeah,
so that you have some direction if you are somebody who's aspiring to have a high income.
yeah,
You have some solutions to problems before these problems even take place. And
Yeah.
so I think that's what we want to go ahead and jump into right now. I think Steph had a stat earlier that we pulled up, and it's from Linden Club, and essentially says that more than 50% of Americans earning over $100,000 are living paycheck to paycheck.
yeah.
And so I think we kind of just want to dive into that
Yeah.
and reasons behind that. So I don't know if you want to, go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I think a little bit back to just even before I met Joseph and thinking about how in the world did I live the life that I was living on what I was earning then, which, when I first started my career, if you've watched the video on my salary, I started off making $30,000. And Joseph was a teacher, right? So you were making, around $40K a year?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
But as my income increased, even before I had met Joe, I remember having these thoughts in my mind, like, where is this money going? And now that I think back to it, I was living life in a way that was, as long as the bank account doesn't go to zero, I'm good.
That's fair. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And I ask people in different conversations, like, what does financial independence mean to you? And at that point in my life, financial independence to me meant financial stability. That's what I tell people now, right? I could pay my own bills. It was out of my parents' household. Like, I was big on being independent in my own right. Joseph laughs sometimes because he's like, "Oh, you really want to be an independent woman?"
She's always wanted to be an independent woman. There's
Yeah.
no question.
But there was a lot of that for me in being able to just stand on my own 2 feet financially, financial stability. But it meant not seeing that bank account go to zero. And so as you make more money and you may not understand where it's going, right? You can easily get yourself into a situation where you are now making $100,000 and you don't know where it's going, and you feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, so I think we should discuss some reasons why people or you felt that way. I always felt that way even I was a school teacher for many years, I think 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And I never felt like I had, let me rephrase that. I always felt like I had money. I never had money because I was spending all my money. And so I think diving into where that money goes and evaporates, if you will, and just diving into that. So, some of the things that we've seen and I've experienced as well, and maybe Stephanie can hit on this a bit more. She's, a lot better with money, and thankfully. But you have this dynamic of how much you earn versus where you live.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even though I'll tell story. I like telling stories. I lived in Bryan College Station, so that's a place in Texas. You can look that up if you're on the computer right now. And it was not a place that was really expensive, but I was a knucklehead, and I would go into Houston almost every weekend because it was about an hour and a half drive.
Yeah.
And I'd go hang out with my cousins who were about my age. And they were still in college at law school. One of them was a little bit younger, so he was still in college and living the life, right? And I would go in and I would spend ungodly. And
Hundreds of dollars on just one night, thousands of dollars on
like
a night.
thousands of dollars on a weekend, right? And this is because I didn't know anything about money, and so I think it's good to hear everyday people talk about their faults and understand. And so I didn't know, like,
I was just doing the same thing in Austin, Texas, by the way. So don't think I wasn't doing.
And that's just what young people who don't know about money do. And hopefully, some of you watching this are learning these mistakes now and trying to, get over them much sooner than we did. But you have your cost of living. So I lived in Bryan College Station. If I would have been smart, I would have saved all that money. I would not. The opportunity cost is so big. By driving into Houston every weekend and spending all that money. If that money would have been saved, the amount of money, if I was smarter, that we would have now would be so much more and so much greater. And so those of you who are thinking about that, where's all my money going? There are a couple things that you can do, right?
Yeah.
You can stay in a place that costs cheaper in order to drive into work, right? That's one thing that I think a lot of people have learned to do.
And we did over time for ourselves.
And we did, yeah, exactly. We did for ourselves as well, right? It was a really smart decision to do that because yes, you did have to commute for work.
Yeah.
I was starting to do real estate, so I also commuted from Central out.
Yeah.
But if we moved further, I would have been smarter too.
Yeah.
But just one of the solutions for that is if you have the ability to, of course, right?
Yeah.
Not naive that enough to think that there's some people that just don't have that ability, but being able to live further out and then commute in so that you're saving more money by commuting in, you're living in a probably bigger place that costs less.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of rub right going on right now with people who have taken opportunities even during COVID to move out to places where they could get more space for their money, and they were working from home for a really long time, and now they're having to grapple with either their employers demanding that they go back and what are they going to do. And so to Joseph's point, we're not saying that this is not a complex conversation or topic, but you are in control of what you ultimately decide, and you don't have to be stuck in the situation that you're in right now either.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand where somebody would feel like they're stuck though, right? I think there was a point whenever I had the cars that we had, I was like, man, I don't like this car. I want to buy a new car. Yeah. And, you go out and you buy this new car, but that makes you feel good for a certain amount of time. And then as you get to the age that we're at, 40, and I'm sure as we get older, you start realizing how unimportant that was, right? And how many people actually do not care about that. Yeah. And if you can step back and then take advice from people who have lived that life, I think you start putting yourself in a situation where, like, I don't need to have a $90,000 car when I'm making $100,000 a year. Yeah. I don't need to live in a high-rise building with the best view of the city to impress some guy or some girl or my friends or my so-called friends. You start realizing
I'm at work all the time, not even in it.
Yeah, and then you're at work because you're trying to pay for those things. Yeah. And so I think if you understand that, you're like, I do have this beat-up car that my parents gave me or that I worked for in the beginning, and I have this, crappy car, and maybe you want to improve to something that's a little bit better. That makes sense, but not going out and buying a brand new car that's going to depreciate by 30 to 40% as soon as it comes off the lot. You just have to be much smarter about those decisions.
And for the three of you that are on the call today or the video today for our live, if there are things that you have done to reduce your cost of living, or you are in a situation you're just trying to think through and ideate through, like, what are options for me? Please weigh in on the conversation. We're happy to add you into the dialogue.
Yeah. I mean, here's the reality. If you're somebody that has the ability to live in the city or outside the city, and you want to make the smartest decision possible, yes, you want to be able to be in the city to have those higher earning jobs. But if you can live outside the city, you do something that most people aren't willing to do, which is miss out on the quote unquote lifestyle of being in the city and being young. But not necessarily. If you cannot do that as much as everybody else and go in every once in a while, you will keep more of your money. You're not going to wipe out your money by living outside the city. If you live inside the city, I think the statistics come out to like 15 to 20% of what you thought you were going to be able to keep actually gets wiped out, right? So even if you make more money than everybody else that lives quote unquote outside the city because they have these different types of jobs, because you decided to live in the city, most of your money is going to get wiped out. Most of that bonus money that you thought you were making is going to get wiped out, and you're actually living on the same level as somebody who lives out in the country, quote unquote, or the suburbs, if you will. So you just have to be smart about those type of decisions, right? And again, those are things that I didn't even know I was supposed to think about. I don't know if that's something that you thought about living, because you lived in the heart of a massive city.
But I knew I was going to have roommates to live that lifestyle, right? And so, when Joseph moved in, I was living with my very good friend and my brother, and then we added Joseph to the mix. So, I wasn't trying to live in the city at the time.
And broke Joseph, by the way.
In a $1,000 one-bedroom apartment, which now that's probably not even an option in downtown Austin.
Yeah.
But we were living in a 3-bedroom for $2,100, and so we were between the 4 of us, we were splitting that. 3 to 4 of us were splitting that. So it made it affordable for us. But looking back on that, there were other options.
Yeah. I mean, I think as we become adults, you look back, right? They say hindsight's 20/20, and it's unfortunate that we have to look back. I think if you are young and you're watching this, or you're older and you have kids or nieces or whatever, younger family members, and you can tell them these stories without being embarrassed about telling these stories, because I think you do go through that situation as well, where you have these emotions of like, well, I feel embarrassed that I was dumb with money.
Or shame or whatever.
But that's how people learn, right? You have to be able to share those experiences, and that's what we hope we're doing right now is
open and honest conversation.
That's right, open and honest conversation, so that people can see these things earlier or share these stories earlier, so that they can make much better decisions than we made, right? As young adults, and now hopefully making better decisions as older adults with kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to the next subtopic when it comes to this overall piece, and this is, let's call it lifestyle creep, lifestyle inflation, whatever that looks like, right? I'm trying to think of just ways that manifested in our life, and we'll use our cars really to start,
that's
right?
a big one.
I came out of college and I had a car that was paid off, and then I eventually took over my mom's car because I thought it was cool, and that was an okay decision. But then when I bought personally my first car, I held on to that thing, and I didn't put a lot of miles on it.
It sat in the garage.
For a while, because I was living in downtown Austin and I didn't need it to drive around to a lot of places. And I paid that car off. Actually, I had it over five years, paid it off, and I should have kept that car.
Yeah.
And it was a great car. Like, there was nothing wrong with this Infiniti.
She met a car lover is the problem.
And yes,
be me. And I'm definitely a car lover, even to this day.
And that's still that, as long as the bank account doesn't go to zero at the time, was an element. The thing that really saved us, I think, at that point, though, was we were still under this assumption that, because when we met and when we decided to bring our lives together and financially, we wanted to live off of one person's income. We really kind of stuck to that for a while, forever. But that one person's income and the bank not going to zero combined, right? We upgraded cars.
Yeah, significantly upgraded cars, right? We'll share what cars we had. And I think Stefanie has a video about that. I'm sure we'll pop it up.
It was the last one. It was the BMW X5 that I talked about in that one. We had an X1. We had an X3.
We had X1, X3. We had a 328i. Obviously, we're BMW fans. Not the best decisions in regard to how much money we're spending on those. And again, Stefanie has a video about that. At one point in time, I think car payment for one car was over
It was $1,200.
$1,200 for a car payment. That's so ridiculous. Looking back at that now, if our kids came home and told me they bought a car like that, I'd be like, whatever it costs to send it back, I'm sending it back and I'm paying that, because you're not keeping that car. That is such a dumb decision. You know what that money would become in 20 years if you didn't spend that money over the next 5 to 6 years.
I'll also say this, though. Since we've moved out of the U.S., the amount of ads and stuff in our face is not near as much.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so I see now, what's the latest water cup, right? There's a Stanley Cups now. It used to be the Yeti. There's always something new. There's always this next thing. Tech is a big one, right? Like that too. And maybe it's just because we're in different parts of our lives and our mindset about money is different. But when you start realizing the opportunity cost of not investing your money for your future self, and the way that I like to teach this is I like to like really show projections to people and like, if you invested this amount of money, action over here, outcome is this. So you can really start getting a sense of what your money could do for you. Go check out the video around, I think it's Retire on Your Terms is what the thumbnail title is.
And we can pop it up.
And yeah,
we'll pop it up later on.
Yeah, we'll pop it up later. But once I actually saw what our investment potential was, my mindset has changed around money completely.
Yeah.
If someone would have just sat me down and explained that at the beginning of my life, maybe I wouldn't have gone to the extreme that we have, right, in terms of what we've saved so far and invested so far, but I would have made some very different decisions because I would have just had more motivation to actually see that through.
Yeah. And so I think the point that Stephanie's making there is like, we all have this urge, right? You start making more money, you move into this nice neighborhood, you have a really nice house, and then all of a sudden you're still driving the same beat up car.
Yeah.
Quote unquote beat up car. There's nothing wrong with the car. It still drives you from point A to point B. And as long as it's not breaking down, nothing has changed about the vehicle, right? Besides it getting older. But then you start seeing your neighbors and they have really nice cars. You live in this nice house that you have now. Lifestyle creep.
Nice car too.
Yeah, you're like, now I gotta have a nice car because my neighbors have a nice car. I gotta have all these nice things. I gotta have a nice lawnmower. I gotta have all these things my neighbors have. When in reality, like if you really wanted to do something like that, I believe that, and just again looking back, and hopefully those of you who are watching this get to look forward. You say, I'm making more money now in my job. I have the opportunity to buy a house if you do get that opportunity. And of course, we'll see what happens with interest rates and all that fun stuff over the next decade. But don't go out and buy a car because you can buy a car because you made more money. Go out and buy a car once you've started setting aside the money that you need to set aside automatically through your paycheck. And one of the things that we learned whenever we started learning about investing was automating your investments.
Absolutely.
And a certain percentage of your check, right? And Stephanie's done great with that. She manages all of our stuff. Most of my stuff is like just work.
Send it over.
Send it over. The money goes where it needs to go. But point being, those of you who are working and you're in the prime of your earning years right now, right? Or even just starting off and you're starting to see that trajectory go up, if you can set aside 10 to 15% of your income to be automated, then you start looking at what money is left over to do the things that you want to do. You want to buy that car? Okay, how long will it take me to save for that car? Versus, I'm just going to go buy that car because I got that money now. This is how much that I've made, how much extra. I can make the monthly payment. This bonus is going to take care of it. But never realizing that you're not saving for your future self, right? And that's really hard to do as a young person, but hopefully as we have these conversations, you see these mistakes that we made, right? And you, even though we've gotten to where we are now, we could have been here much faster.
Here's the other thing. Of all the things that we've bought, right, material things, we've now moved across the world twice, and we have given away so much stuff.
Oh yeah, we're talking about that the other day.
So much stuff.
Yeah.
And it feels great to start anew and like all that other materialistic weight is gone.
Yeah.
But it makes you think like all the things that you can actually do without. And now even more so with little kids. That's the other thing around like lifestyle, like giving your kids the next thing and like give them what you may not have had or whatever. And, you know, for those of us that have or didn't have what we wish we did as little kids, and now as parents want to provide anything and everything to our children, that's great. And at the same time, if your children are your retirement plan, that's challenging and that's a big burden for them because it's going to be more expensive going forward, right? So yeah, I think you have to kind of think of it in that frame as well.
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. Like, lifestyle creep's going to happen. Yeah. You're going to want to do these things. That's a feeling that's never going to go away. But it's a question of how do you keep from wiping out your future self, your future financial wealth, right? And all the progress that you did, the hard work that you did to get the job that made you more money. And then just going and being like, I'm going to go buy all these new things. And it just completely wipes all those things out. And you don't want to do that, right? You want to be very intentional about that money and what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah. So I think that's how you start making headway on your financial goals, right? Yeah. And building the wealth, the long-term wealth that you want to build is setting aside that money automatically so that it starts earning on itself.
And I think you'll be surprised once you can do that. You can start doing more if you decide to do more to accelerate your plan, if that's your choice and what you want to do.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into the next thing, which is the cost of education and in order to get these high earning jobs,
Yeah.
and then having to pay off that debt.
Yeah, so let's think about this. And I think about it through the frame of like, let's assume somebody goes off and gets their MBA. And I was really faced with this at some point during my career.
Yeah.
And I literally asked my boss, like, should I get my MBA or should I stay here at this company and essentially get the company MBA? I'm very glad that I didn't. But I can completely see where for many who may take the MBA because they need to take a step back and figure out what they want to do with their career with the ultimate goal of getting a higher paying job or a professional, degree like doctor, lawyer, all these things. In many cases, that comes with a lot of student loans, right? And for some MBAs as well, these loans may not necessarily be federal, right? They may be private. And so come graduation and now you're in this higher paying job, a lot of your money is needing to go towards paying off your student loans. And the Secure Act that's passed this past year, we were talking about this because we were just trying to look through some of this. We paid off our loans in 2020, the last part of it, right?
Yeah, in bulk.
In bulk, because we just wanted to get rid of it. But I've had clients who've come to me with 6 figures of student loan debt. And so now some people are faced with, well, do I invest in my retirement account, like my 401k, to get my company match? Or do I pay off my student loans because I need to pay off my student loans? And the Secure Act...
First off, before she jumps into it, sometimes Stefanie talks so fast, she might glaze over something. This is really huge. So make sure you're listening. If you're currently a student or currently working, and you have this opportunity, you'll want to ask your employer about it, just do a little bit more research about it, but go ahead and talk about it, because I just want to make sure we make sure it's not something that people glaze over.
Yeah, I mean, the initial point of this part was, hey, go invest in your 401k so you can at least get your employer's match. But if you're feeling like you can't do that because you need to pay off your student loans, some employers and 401ks are going to allow for employers to match a level of income, right, that employees pay off towards their student loans. So while you may be faced with the decision of, well, I can't invest for my retirement, I need to pay off these student loans, some employers out there with some 401ks, right, not all, may have this option. And so it's definitely worth you taking some action to go research what the Secure Act is, how it's impacting 401ks, and if you're coming out of a professional degree and searching employers, that could very well be something that you want to take a look at further if you're weighing different employers and figuring out what your decision is.
Yeah, so I'll say it in a different way. If you have the opportunity to pay off, I think it's using 2% of your check to pay off your student loans, if you're willing to do that, then the employers who do offer this will give you up to 5%, I believe, of your check to go to your 401k. So think about it this way. You're getting to pay off your debt that you need to pay off anyway, right, that you're going to have to pay off. At the same time, your employer is saying, hey, technically this is like a bonus. I'm giving you this extra 5% because you're doing 2% to pay off your debt. I'm going to give you this 5% in order to grow your wealth, right? And so I think that's really important for those of you who are in that position trying to decide, do I pay off my student loans or do I invest? Like Stefanie said, to go do this research and find out if your employer offers this or not. And even probably a lot of employers don't even know exist. And so maybe bringing it up might give you a good opportunity to say, hey, I want to pay off my student loans. I also want to build my wealth through this company. Is this something that we can look into? Yeah.
And the other thing is, looking at your retirement accounts and where you can invest money in your retirement accounts if you aren't paying off as much towards your student loans, or you can do both, gives you the opportunity to also contribute pre-tax dollars if you are investing in your 401k, getting your match, and being able to reduce some of your taxable income, which is great.
Yeah,
it's kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone there.
Yeah, and here's another statistic that we pulled up. Over 40% of Americans are not utilizing their 401k, even if their employer has a match. So think about that. Just by you taking the step to do a little bit of research and saying, hey, I'm willing to put some of this money aside in order to, or invest some of this money into my 401k, you're going to be ahead of 40% of Americans when it comes to investing. So
let's use some average examples. The average employer's match is around 6%.
Okay.
If you're making $100,000, 6% of that $100,000 is $6K, right? So let's assume that your employer matches the full 6%. So you're now investing $12K a year, right? If you do that for 10 years, you will have invested about $120,000 in total.
Yeah.
Really, yours is $60,000. The employer is the other $60K.
That's true. Yeah. So you would have invested $60,000
Did you
yourself.
run 8 to 10%?
I run 8%. It comes out to about $185,000 total.
So for your $60K, you've tripled your money. First of all,
that's a good way to look at it.
And then in 20 years.
And then what we said was, okay, then you stopped investing at that point, and then 10 years later, right? So you've done that, from the age of 30 to 40. And then from 40 to 50, you end up with about $590,000.
And you just let it ride. You don't continue to invest.
That's without ever investing another dollar. And so if you look at it from that perspective, you're at $500,000 just by deciding to invest in your 401k and get the match. And that's if you're earning over $100,000 and you have a 6% match. So if you don't do it, Stefanie and I were talking about this, it's literally about a $500,000 mistake over the course of 20 years. And of that, you invested $60,000. So realistically, $60,000 to make about $590,000, and you can go do the math. I could be wrong, but it's pretty close to that.
Here's I think the other thing, and that Gloria is making this comment in the comments, and thanks for your comment around 401k being a ripoff due to the fees. 401ks can certainly have fees.
Yes.
And making sure that you understand the ins and outs of your 401k is incredibly important. For me, right, coming out of a 15-year career, I invested about $100,000, and my employer matched $80K because at some point I was investing more than what the employer would match. That account was around $350,000 when I left. So my $100,000 is now $350-ish. And I rolled that 401k over specifically to get out of the fees.
Yeah.
And now that amount of money, right, because I invested in Roth 401k and traditional 401k, is in self-directed IRAs, both traditional and Roth IRAs, because I wanted to take control of my money.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you also move from different employers, right, understand your vesting schedules, but roll your 401k into something that you control that has lower fees, right? Because you can do that. It's a non-taxable event, and it's 100% worth it.
And I'm sure we'll make a video about it. I'll say this to Gloria's point. I am very skeptical about putting my money in different places. That's just my personality. And Gloria, you may be the same. But the reality is this. If I'm going to get free money, I'm going to take the free money.
Absolutely.
Always. And if it's
100% return for your money.
Yeah, 100% return on my money technically. But if I'm worried about the fees, and Stefanie and I have had this conversation around taxes and stuff and dividends, it's like I'm worried about these little fees, and yes, they will add up over time. But if I'm getting fees based on the amount of money that I'm making, which I'm making way more money than the fees will ever be, right now I'm going to take the free money. I'll take the hit on the fees because I'm going to make way more money than not investing at all. And so I think 401ks are good for people. And Gloria, you may be much more in tune with how you want to invest your money. And so you may be way ahead than most people. But again, knowing that, I think the large percentage of Americans don't invest at all into their 401ks or don't invest, then at least getting them started is a good place. And then they can learn like you, get a little bit more education and then make those decisions like Stefanie did to say, let me move this over. Let me go ahead and self-direct this because I don't want the fees and I think I can make more money.
Because imagine, right, that amount of money, I'm going to be 40 at 61, 65, it's going to be at least 2.1 million. But if I would have left that with my old 401k service provider, first of all, the fees would have been worse if I left it after leaving my employer.
Yeah.
It would have eroded a lot of that money being able to compound and actually work itself over the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah, but no, I think that's good. I'm glad you brought that point up, Gloria, because I think there are a lot of people who have that thought process, and I would not keep those fees away from me investing at all, right?
Absolutely.
But once I got educated enough and knew how to manage my money, then I would start rolling that over. So I really appreciate that thought process and the comment, because we all have to have these open and honest conversations in order to have some direction. And if we don't have these conversations, then other people don't know which way to go. So I really appreciate that, Gloria. I think we covered a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
we just kind of to summarize, right? Cost of living is definitely a piece when it comes to impacting someone's sense of, hey, I'm now making really good money, but I'm living to paycheck to paycheck. Lifestyle creep is a big one that can really creep up on you if you're not aware. And for many high income earners, after going to school to now have that high income, you may be grappling with how are you going to prioritize saving for your retirement and paying off those student loans. The last thing I will say about this is it's really important to know your numbers.
Yeah.
And knowing your numbers is really, really powerful. And so we'll link a couple of resources that you can check out, whether it's projecting your future retirement and or your financial independence plan, or just clearly getting an understanding of your numbers. Really important.
Yeah, and hopefully we came up with some solutions for you. If you want to go back and watch it, please do. I think there are several solutions to these situations. It may not work for everybody, but I think providing some solutions is a great direction. And the other thing is, when we're talking about feeling rich and not living paycheck to paycheck, it's not about the money that you make. Because I think some people making $50,000 in a certain city or location probably feel much richer than people making $100,000 living in a middle of the city.
Absolutely.
And so it's about managing your money.
Or in a stressful job that they don't love, right?
Also true, yeah. So it's about managing your money and feeling good about, the experiences that you get to have with that money, and then also being able to say, I want to build my future with this money that I've earned. And so don't always look at it as like, oh, I'm not rich because I don't make a lot of money.
Yeah,
it's about how much can you manage, how much can you keep, how much can you invest in order to build the life that you want and build that future wealthy life for yourself and for your family.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to think that having that secure paycheck was rich for a long time, right? And would give me a lot of security in my own heart. But I've learned a lot over the last now 5 years-ish of unwinding that mindset, and I don't make near as much
The last
anymore.
2 years have been a lot less stressful.
And a lot less stressful. I feel like a human being now. It's pretty
Like a
awesome.
robot?
Yeah. But we really appreciate your time and support for being here. If you found value in this, please like. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And we hope today's discussion gave you a little bit more food for thought on how to give yourself permission
to be wealthy. We'll see you guys in the next one.
All right.
Thanks. And then get to oddly do this ending thing again. We'll figure this out one day, guys.
Well done.